Yesterday we looked at and broke down the field battle gameplay we were shown at Gamescom in the GameStar interview for Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord. But this is something different. Here we can see a full siege play out in action, and oh my, it looks incredible. Starting off with the world map, we see what we spoke about a couple of developer blogs ago, the Bombardment Phase. Once deciding to siege a castle, the player gets the option to take the Bombardment Phase and set up siege weaponry in order to use it on the battlefield. Now of course, the more siege weaponry, the longer it will take to siege the castle. The more expensive it is, but the more chances you will get in order to breach the enemy walls. Not only can the attacker do this and set up their equipment, but it seems that the defender has these possibilities as well, being able to place catapults and ballista on the walls in order to halt the progression of the enemy that threatens your city. Once set up, in this phase, the siege equipment will start attacking the enemy walls. The Bombardment Phase is so called because you can have the chance to weaken the enemies inside, maybe trying to do so much damage that you can lower their defenses or hurt their army, making it much easier to invade during the assault phase, or even just sitting back if that's more your thing, saving your resources and starving out the city. But bear in mind, the longer you wait, the more chance the enemy will be able to bring up a reinforcing army to help them, and at that point you have a whole different problem. But what happens when this phase is over? Where do you go next in the sieges in Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord? Well, once deciding to lead the assault, we can see that you are then taken to the next phase. And this is called the assault phase, and this is what most of you will be familiar with if you've played Mount and Blade games before. This is the part where you really go up to the walls and you do the full-on battle. But there's an additional section to this that we can see in the gameplay, and we actually saw this back in 2017 during the siege gameplay. At the beginning, you have the option to deploy weaponry, siege weaponry mostly. So you can see things like catapults, siege towers, and you can even see trebuchets being placed down. We have seen ballistas as well being put on, and if you're defending, you can do this on the walls as well, as we've seen previously in the past. There's also an option in the bottom right, as we can see, to auto deploy, which I'm guessing will just put some random things there. If you have these siege weaponries built, they'll just put them in there, and then you won't really have to worry about that. But it doesn't seem, unfortunately, that you have the option when deploying your army. They don't really want to be too close to total war. Yes, you have this deployment phase a bit like you would have in a total war game, but instead of making it where your whole army is deployable, it just chooses what siege weaponry you put down. Which makes sense, since you've already been bombarding the castle. Your guys have set up camp and they have got their stuff ready. And when it's time to assault the castle, they will go forward in position in their formations. From then, of course, it will take time to build this siege weaponry, deciding where you deploy it, but your men will always be ready to charge into the battle. Once you spawn in though, it's back up to you to control your men, much like you would do in any other Mount and Blade game, but this time there's way more options and controls to utilize in taking the castle. Now I might add, we have been through all this and all the new orders that you can give your troops in terms of movement, formations, facing, and even transferring troops to AI lords. If you want to go and see a more in-depth look at that, make sure you go and check out my last video on the last bit of gameplay. There'll be a card, go and watch that. But furthermore, you can now go and take control of this siege weapon you have put down. The player here taking control of the trebuchet and being able to take it and fire upon the enemy castle. Now, we don't have any confirmation about the walls knocking down, and it's sort of annoying me because there's been hints. In the trailer, we've seen crenellations falling down from siege weaponry, but in terms of the walls, there hasn't really been anything that's got anything to do with it. So I don't think you can actually breach through the full walls, but we haven't, like I said, had any confirmation which way with that. Although I have experienced in the closed beta that there's also destructible terrain in that, so that will be in the multiplayer as well. But in terms of full walls, I really don't know so far. They've just sort of avoided that completely. I do love how the AI will reload for you though if you're on a siege weapon, and we saw this back in 2017 in that siege gameplay where he was on the catapult firing and the AI guys would go and get the rocks and put them back in. This is a very similar thing with the trebuchet as well, and the animations on the trebuchets just look absolutely gorgeous. And notice, talking about the AI, how archers now take cover behind barricades and spikes, covering them from other missiles and any enemy cavalry that might tend to sally forth and try and chase them down. They now use these barricades and spikes to their advantage. Rather than just being more aesthetic on the battlefield, these are things you're actually going to be able to use and utilize throughout your game. Never mind just as you as a person, but also your AI will tend to do this. Also, infantry go into the ladders and siege towers in order to push them on their own. The infantry on the left using the battering ram as well and taking cover underneath it as well. Now this is about where the Game Start interview finishes, so let's hand it over to the Rocket Beans TV gameplay that was showcased alongside some of the Tale Worlds developers themselves, including Armageddon. Now the siege maps, and especially on this one compared to the other one, look massive. You can really feel a full-sized castle here that is being invaded. The other one did show a much larger siege than you would expect in Warband, but this time we can really see it from the outside, and you get to see that full scale, and I'm looking forward to seeing how big they can really get and exactly how many people. Hopefully tomorrow I'll get a video up about the amount and the battle sizes that we can get into Bannerlord, but that will be coming pretty soon. But in this particular siege, it's actually mentioned how the AI is controlling themselves in the battle. The AI Lord has taken control and ordering the men into the castle, allowing the players to showcase more in Bannerlord. But how does this work? We have heard about AI actually being able to get their hands on the armies and control it themselves, and now with the new improved AI, I think this is a pretty good idea. Well, this works because each section of troops in your army has its own little AI commander. It may not be one of the big lords, but they'll all at least have an AI commander within them, controlling that contingent. Now, they won't necessarily do anything if you decided to take control on the battlefield, but if you decide to offer up your orders to the AI themselves, these commanders will take control of their unit and take it to the fields. The AI is so much better, as we have seen in the Bannerlord gameplay. Later we can see that they managed to flank around the enemy. In Warband, when you get into a siege and you wanted to get up into the castle, you just click charge and they just all go up the siege tower or the ladder or whatever, and it'll just be a complete cluster. But this is very different. The AI seems to be actually using their initiative, getting round the sides, flanking the enemy. The troops don't always go the same way. They take different sides of the city. Some, as you can see, up the siege towers, some up ladders, and even some with the battering rams and batter through the main gates. But they all do this in order to sandwich the enemy in the middle. Small things like this from the AI make the whole difference on the battlefield and the gaming experience itself. It can change a mediocre fun game to an incredible game because it gives you that much more choice, whether you want to take to the battlefield and whether you want to give these micromanaging orders on top of these macro managing orders, or maybe you want a little bit of control and maybe you just want, hey, you go there, then you do your bit of firing and do your own thing. Or maybe you don't want to have any responsibilities on your army. Maybe you like playing Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord as the character itself, and that's what you're focused on. The whole strategy isn't really your cup of tea, so you give that responsibility to the AI. They will control where their troops go, what formations they do, whether they flank or they charge in at the front. But because the AI is so much better improved, they're able to do that, and successfully as well, actually making you want to use it, rather than having it be a last resort if you're like, oh, we're gonna win this battle anyway, we might as well just charge in. No, the AI will actually help and use tactics, using bits of the terrain to their advantage, using formations, and using this troop on troop combat and deciding, well, we'll probably not do very well against that troop, but we'll do a lot better against that troop. The type of thing that you would think to do as a player is now within the AI. Now we do see that the architecture in the city is gorgeous. We only have a tiny little bit of a glimpse, but oh my, it looks so nice. You can see the way the buildings are made, and they're all inspired by real places and real times. The Britannian cities will be more like ancient Britain. These medieval barbarian sort, in quotes, cities will be run by these places. The Azerite place will be made more of sandstone, the type of materials they can get there. The Kurzates will have all these nomadic huts and things like that, but they'll probably have a lot less cities because these guys are more nomadic guys anyway, so they're not very good at sieges. They do even mention in this gameplay that the Kurzates, whilst yes, they are pretty good when it comes to these field battles, when it comes to cities, they're at a disadvantage. So you're going to have to think much more about numbers than you would with someone like the Empire, who their prowess and strength and their training is at the forefront. So taking cities can even be done when they're completely outnumbered by the enemy. But as you can see here, the player is wounded in the battle. Now, what does this mean? Is it over for good? Well, there's a couple of options here. When they're wounding in battle, they'll probably come back. But it has been mentioned in the past, there's settings that you can put on in your Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord game where you can die and it is a permadeath. that's the end of that character. Because of course Mount and Blade is all about focusing on the character and not your faction or everything as a whole. This is your character, so when they die, they die. Now you can take control of a son or a daughter or sibling or another heir, but you'll have different attributes. You won't have all the same stuff that you had if you've been working on your skills, maybe your archery, your swordsmanship. If you die and your son takes over, he's going to have completely different attributes and less experience, so his leadership's not going to be as great. But this is still a setting that can be turned on and off, a sort of permadeath option. So if you want to play it as you would play normal Mount and Blade Warband style, but in Bannerlord, that is also an option that you can do where you'll just get wounded and you'll never actually die. But that's pretty much it for this bit of Siege gameplay. I'm so excited. We've probably got one more bit of gameplay to bring you, but I have got access to the Bannerlord beta, and I think the NDA has been lifted, so I will completely double check on that. But I will hopefully be streaming at 8 PM UK time tonight on my YouTube channel and putting up some videos about the Bannerlord closed beta pretty soon. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you follow me on Twitter for all the latest news. But until then, I will see you in the next one.